Help for the English reader. The New Greek Interlinear New Testament. There are Greek to English literal translations which can help clear up the foggy verses. Introduction, quote, "Very few people learn Greek well enough to read the Greek New Testament unaided. An interlinear translation helps those who, having very little knowledge of Greek, want the most basic word-for-word literal translation of the Greek text." And it goes on. The King James Version has serious defects. By the middle of the 19th century, the development of biblical studies and the discovery of many biblical manuscripts more ancient than those on which the KJV was based on made it apparent that these defects were so many as to call for revision. End quote. For us English readers, the New Greek Interlinear New Testament is another tool we can use to understand what was actually given to us, and it can be used to clear up the foggy verses. The literal translation of the Greek, while not sounding poetic, it clears up many items of confusion. Case number 1, Matthew 19:9. English translations say, "Whoever divorces his wife except for porneia and marries another commits adultery, and whoever marries her who is divorced commits adultery." But this is not what Luke 16:18 says. It has no exception clause. And it says, "Whoever divorces his wife and marries another commits adultery, and whoever marries her who is divorced commits adultery." This is the same discussion Jesus had with the Pharisees regarding divorce and remarriage. Context tells us Jesus was arguing with the Pharisees about Deuteronomy 24. Moses gave this precept because of hardness of heart. Jesus did away with it. He tells them God made man and woman one flesh in marriage. Divorcing and remarrying another is adultery. Later on, the disciples asked Jesus about this again privately, and he told them the same thing. Divorcing and remarrying somebody else is adultery in Mark chapter 10. There's no exception. We also get further instruction from 1 Corinthians 7:10 through 11 and Romans 7:2 through 3, which confirms divorcing and remarrying somebody else is adultery. Finally, here is what the literal Greek of older manuscripts say. "But I say to you that whoever divorces the wife of him may epiporneia, not based on porneia, and marries another commits adultery," and so on. That is to say, whoever divorces his wife and marries another commits adultery, not for porneia. No divorcing for porneia. Matthew 19:9 in the Greek excludes Deuteronomy 24. Permission to divorce and remarry for porneia. It does not restate that you can divorce and remarry for porneia. Again, if you want more detail on this, see the Leslie McFall article on this and an older video on Matthew 19:9. Jesus taught marriage is for life. Only death ends a marriage. A woman separated from her husband is to reconcile or remain single. If she is remarried to another while her covenant spouse is still alive, she is an adulterer. All three synoptic gospels harmonize in the Greek, both in context and in language. Case number 2. John 3:16, King James. "Whosoever believeth in him should not perish but have everlasting life." But the literal Greek has a different verb tense. There's continuing action. The Greek says, "Everyone believing in him may not perish, but may have life eternal." What this means is those who continue to believe in him may not perish, but may have life eternal. Contextually, Jesus said one has to endure to the end to be saved. Today there are people who think they got saved at a point in time when they made a confession of faith, and then they don't have to do anything else. Faith alone, once saved, always saved. Because they believe and trust that Jesus died for their sins, they believe and trust in this fact, and they don't obey or follow Jesus. For them, they got saved, and that's all there is to it. Here are some real examples. Number 1, an elderly man attended a Bible study group at McDonald's for a few years. He stated he was saved in the 1960s, and it turns out he didn't know much about the gospel. He just went and did Bible studies. This is a hearer of the word, not a doer of the word, and not someone who understood it. Number 2, an elderly woman said she'd grown up in church, and she was shocked about the divorcing and remarrying being adultery, and she began arguing that she was happy her son divorced his non-believing wife and married somebody at her church. She sounded like she never even heard of Mark chapter 10. Number 3, a younger woman in fornication shared she wanted to leave her boyfriend and start dating a married man. When told this is grave sin, she replied not to worry about her because she was saved. All three of these people state they got saved at one point in time, but their lives reflect they don't understand his word or keep it. They may have believed at one time, but their life reflects they don't believe today. They don't walk with Jesus. Peter himself preached the gospel to Cornelius the Gentile. Acts 10:43, King James reads, "To him all the prophets witness that through his name whosoever believeth in him shall receive remission of sins." This is a very important salvation verse. Remember, sinners perish. The Greek reads, "To this one all the prophets bear witness, forgiveness of sins to receive through the name of him, all the ones believing in him." Believing. Again, believing in him is a continuous action. It is endurance, not a one-time confession. It's proven by deeds. Believing means following Jesus. The Greek manuscripts cast serious doubt on once saved, always saved. It stresses one has to endure in the faith and not give up. One walks away by going back to sinning and thereby denying him by their life. Case number 3. Peter is not the rock. Jesus is the rock of salvation. Everyone is to follow the rock of salvation. His words are what saves. By context, we already know Jesus is the rock. Luke 6:46 through 48 reads, "Why do you call me Lord, Lord, but do not do the things I say? He who comes to me and hears my sayings and does them, I will show you whom he is like." And it goes on, "He builds his house on the rock, the Petra." Petra is a large mass of rock, 4073 Strongs. 1 Corinthians 10:1 through 4. The Greek interlinear says, "For I do not want you to be ignorant, brothers, that the fathers of us all under the cloud, where and under the sea passed, and all into Moses were baptized in the cloud and in the sea, all the same spiritual food ate, and all the same spiritual drink, for they were drinking from a spiritual rock following them, the Petra." The Petra was Christ. What about Matthew 16:18? King James, "And I say unto thee, that thou art Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it." Well, the Greek says something else. "And I say to you that you are Petros," Strong's 4074, "and upon this Petra," 4073, "I will build of me the church, and the gates of Hades will not overcome it." The church is built on Jesus the rock, Petra. It's not built on Peter. Summary. The Greek interlinear New Testament is another tool for English readers to use because it's a literal translation of the Greek. It's not very poetic, but it really helps to clear up the foggy verses. It also helps to reveal deception. It is critical for everyone to study because laziness is going to cause people to perish. Focus on what Jesus and his apostles taught and pray and ask the Spirit to bring understanding to the Scriptures. Jesus bless you.